Before we begin, if you want to see more real-life horror, mysterious, and spine-chilling stories like this, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so that every new video comes straight to your phone. Now, let's dive into today's terrifying story.
I never thought that one late-night call would change my life forever. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 27, an ER doctor living in a small town in rural Oregon. Life here is quiet, almost painfully so, especially at night. The town is surrounded by dense forests and small lakes, and most people rarely venture out after dusk. My family had always warned me about the older parts of the woods near Mud Island Road, a thin strip of land jutting out between two stretches of dense riverbank forest. Locals rarely talk about it, and when they do, it's only in whispers. They call it the place that swallows the lost, and as a doctor, I've heard enough stories to know that fear has a way of stretching the imagination. But fear or no fear, I have a job, and lives don't wait for caution. That night, it was 12:45 a.m. when my pager buzzed. An urgent call. A patient with a severe reaction, requiring immediate intervention. My mother had just called, worried about me working so late, especially after the recent string of strange disappearances in the area. She mentioned the old traditions of protective charms, superstitions about people going out alone near the riverbanks at night, about the forest spirits that haunt Mud Island. She begged me not to go. But I had no choice. I grabbed my medical bag, slung it over my shoulder, and reminded myself that these were just stories. Fog was rolling in as I hit the narrow, unlit road. The rural highway was almost completely deserted, the trees looming like silent giants on both sides. Somewhere along the curve, the river glimmered faintly through the fog, reflecting an eerie silver light. I kept my phone ready, though I knew the battery was low. The road was slick with dew, and the forest seemed to close in on me with every turn. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought it was a deer, pale, still, and awkwardly lying in the middle of the narrow road. I swerved to avoid hitting her, my tires slipping on the wet asphalt, almost sending me off the road. I jumped off my SUV to check. She was a young woman, barely 19 or 20, wearing a soaked white dress that looked like a bridal gown. Her hair was tangled, and faint jingling sounds came from the delicate anklets on her feet. She had a small bundle beside her, wrapped in wet cloth. My medical instincts kicked in immediately. I rushed to her, asking if she was hurt. She tried to speak, her lips moving, but no sound came out. I checked her pulse. Nothing. My heart raced. My mind screamed, "This can't be happening." I reached for my stethoscope. Still nothing. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, fixated on me, pleading silently. Then, almost instinctively, she reached for the red handkerchief tied around my wrist, a charm my mother had insisted I carry. She pulled at it, trying to draw me toward her. Fear clawed up my throat. I took a step back. The fog thickened, wrapping around the trees and road like a living thing. I felt my body lock in place. Everything around me, the sounds, the silence, the heavy wet air, was amplified. She stood slowly, unnaturally, as if gravity didn't apply to her. I shouted, asking if she was okay. She only pointed toward the deep woods behind her, mouthing words I couldn't hear. I wanted to help, I always do, but something in her stare told me I wasn't just dealing with a lost girl. My instinct screamed, "Run," but my conscience, my medical oath, refused. Somewhere between the forest and the fog, I realized I was no longer in control. I grabbed the bundle beside her, lifting it cautiously. Inside was a bridal outfit, jewelry, anklets, and delicate slippers. The detail was perfect, unsettlingly perfect, as though she had just stepped out of a wedding ceremony, but why was she lying in the middle of a deserted rural road at night? Before I could react, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath formed thick clouds. A whisper, soft but insistent, came from the fog. "Please, take me to him." Please, my muscles froze. The voice came from her, yet it was impossible. I took a cautious step back, but when I glanced at my SUV, she was standing beside it, as if she had walked there in a blink. Every instinct I had as a doctor, as a rational man, screamed that something was wrong, something beyond comprehension. Yet my compassion, my oath to help those in need, kept me rooted. I picked up the handkerchief she had tried to snatch, tying it tightly around my wrist again, hoping it would give me some protection. I whispered to her, I want to help you, I can, but you must let me go. I have someone else who needs me. She tilted her head, an eerie, desperate nod. Then suddenly, before I could even process it, she vanished. Not a step, not a shadow, she simply disappeared into the fog. I felt the silence crush me. My heart pounded. I jumped into the SUV, my hands shaking as I drove as fast as possible through the winding road, heading to the patient waiting for my care. But the handkerchief on my wrist, it was warm, almost pulsing, as if she had left a part of herself behind. And somewhere, deep in my mind, I knew this was not the end. I barely caught my breath as I drove through the fogged-up forest road, the chill crawling under my skin. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, and I could still feel the warmth radiating from the handkerchief tied around my wrist. It pulsed faintly, almost as if it had a heartbeat of its own. I told myself repeatedly that it was my imagination, the adrenaline, the exhaustion from the shift. But deep down, I knew what I had just seen could not be explained. It felt wrong, fundamentally, impossibly wrong. My SUV's headlights barely penetrated the thick blanket of fog that had rolled in from the river. Trees loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Every bump in the road sounded like a gunshot in the quiet. I kept glancing at the bundle I had picked up, the bridal outfit, the jewelry, the delicate slippers. They were soaked, the faint smell of moss and decay clinging to the fabric, but there was something unnervingly fresh about them, as if she had only just stepped out of the gown. My phone buzzed. I nearly jumped. It was the patient. Dr. Mercer? Are you on your way? They're worsening, please hurry. My chest tightened. I had to go. I had to save a life. I told myself firmly, I can't get distracted. The forest road seemed endless, twisting back on itself in ways that made no sense. And then I saw her again. Standing in the middle of the road, exactly where she had appeared before. She hadn't moved an inch physically, yet she was there. Her eyes, wide and pleading, locked on mine. My heart skipped a beat. The fog seemed to swirl around her, moving like smoke, wrapping her in a haze that distorted everything. I slammed the brakes. My tires skidded on the wet asphalt. I jumped out again, heart hammering, but she didn't scream, didn't run, didn't even blink. She simply stared, her tiny, pale hands outstretched, beckoning me toward the woods. My training as a doctor kicked in. I had to assess, to understand, to help. I approached cautiously, asking if she was okay, checking again for a pulse. Nothing. I felt the panic rising. This was impossible. Then I noticed something even stranger. The forest behind her, dense and dark, seemed to shift. Shapes moved between the trees, shadows that weren't shadows, branches that seemed to twitch like fingers, reaching toward her. A low, almost imperceptible humming began, vibrating in my ears. It was soft, melodic, desperate. It was her voice, calling my name, whispering, "Please, help me." My rational mind screamed to run, but my instincts wouldn't let me leave. I stepped closer, and she tilted her head slightly, her lips moving soundlessly. Then, suddenly, she stepped backward. My SUV's engine roared, a reminder that time was running. I grabbed her hand, and she tugged at me. The grip was icy, unreal. I tried to resist, but her pull was unnerving, almost supernatural. My bag slipped from my shoulder, spilling medical instruments onto the wet asphalt. I dropped to pick them up, and when I looked up, she was gone. Just vanished. No footsteps, no rustle, nothing. Only the thick fog and the faint jingling of anklets echoing somewhere deep in the woods. My body shook violently. I slammed the bag back over my shoulder and ran toward the SUV, my heart racing. I jumped in and hit the ignition. The engine roared to life, but the fog seemed denser now, almost tangible, pressing against the vehicle like water. And then I saw it in the rearview mirror, her. Standing on the road behind me, watching, her gown shimmering in the fog like wet moonlight. I floored the accelerator, tires spinning, spraying mud and water onto the roadside. But no matter how fast I went, she remained there, eerily still, unblinking, following me in a way that made no sense. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the fog, that my exhausted brain was playing games. But then the jingling of the anklets grew louder, synchronized with the heartbeat that I could suddenly feel in the handkerchief on my wrist. My pulse matched it. My rational mind screamed, "She's not human. She is not human." The road twisted, turning into the deeper woods, a place I knew well, but somehow the surroundings were wrong angles, wrong distances. The trees were closer together, forming unnatural corridors. I was trapped in a labyrinth. My patient's face flashed in my mind. I needed to save them. I had to escape this nightmare and get to them. But she kept appearing, now closer, emerging from the fog in front of me. She lifted the bundle, the bridal trousseau, and the clothes within shimmered with an eerie wet light. She spoke again, whispering desperately, "Take me to him, please, take me to him." I swallowed hard. I could feel my hands trembling on the wheel. I told her, out loud, "I can't. I have someone else who needs me. I can't let you stop me. I want to help, but I cannot." The wind howled through the trees. Her eyes filled with pleading sorrow, and her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but only silence came out. Then, in a blink, she was gone. No trace, nothing but a faint dampness in the fog where she had stood. I exhaled, shaking uncontrollably. My SUV's heater was still running, fogging up the windshield, but I could see the handkerchief on my wrist glowing faintly. Almost like a heartbeat. I drove faster now, desperate, eyes scanning every turn, every shadow. The road seemed endless, but I had no choice. I had to reach my patient. Yet somewhere deep in the woods, I felt a presence, a watchful gaze, following me, unseen but unmistakably there. And I knew this was only the beginning. The further I drove into the forest, the more the world around me seemed to twist into something unreal. The road that I had known for years, that had led me countless times to late-night patient calls, now felt unfamiliar. Trees leaned unnaturally toward the road, their branches scraping against my windshield with eerie precision, as if guiding me somewhere I didn't want to go. My headlights reflected off wet leaves and thick fog, creating moving shadows that danced across the asphalt. And then I saw her again. Standing directly in the middle of the road, her pale bridal gown clinging to her body, her hair wet and matted, her tiny anklets jingling softly with every subtle movement. But this time, she wasn't silent. Her voice, low and desperate, carried across the fog. "Please, don't leave me, please, take me to him." I slammed the brakes, the SUV skidding on the wet ground. My heart pounded so loudly that I thought she could hear it. I wanted to drive past, to escape, but my mind screamed that I couldn't. Something about her gaze, so full of pleading sorrow, rooted me in place. Slowly, she stepped forward, and with each step, the fog thickened, coiling around her like a living cloak. I could feel my body growing cold, as if the air itself carried a warning. I grabbed the bag of medical supplies tighter, my knuckles white, and whispered, "I can't. I have someone waiting, please, just let me go." But she didn't listen. Her movement became unnatural, too fluid, too fast, almost gliding toward me. I tried to reverse, my SUV slipping on the wet mud at the edges of the road, but the moment I moved, I realized that the path behind me had somehow changed. The same curve I had passed moments ago now appeared before me, the same twisted tree arching across the road. I felt my stomach drop. I was moving in circles. Every turn, every twist, brought me back to the same point, the spot where I had first encountered her. Panic surged. My rational mind screamed that this was impossible, yet my eyes confirmed it. There she stood, serene and terrifying at the same time, holding her bundle tightly, her gaze locked on mine. I tried honking, shouting, anything to break the loop, but my voice was swallowed by the fog. Then I noticed the blood. Dark, viscous, smeared on the wet asphalt, forming a faint trail that led from the roadside into the dense woods. It didn't appear fresh, yet it glistened under my headlights as if freshly spilled. My stomach turned. I knew, somehow, that the blood belonged to her, or perhaps to someone she had once loved. My pulse quickened, matching the rhythm of the handkerchief on my wrist. The faint warmth now pulsed like a second heartbeat, syncing with my own. I felt disoriented. Was it possible she was not entirely of this world? The whispers returned, low and melodic, weaving into the sound of the wind through the trees. I need to find him. I need to find him. I felt a cold hand brush against my neck. I jerked, looking around. No one was there. The fog swirled, forming shapes that resembled her twisted silhouette, multiplying, surrounding me. My SUV's engine roared in protest as I tried to accelerate. But the trees seemed closer now, forming a natural corridor that made the road feel narrower than it could possibly be. Every attempt to escape brought me back to the same curve, the same patch of road where the fog was thickest, where the woman waited silently, watching. I realized then that I wasn't just being followed, I was being trapped. The forest had become a labyrinth, designed by some force I could neither understand nor fight. I tried to reason, to tell myself that this was fatigue, hallucination, but the jingling of her anklets was too precise, too real. I could hear each delicate chime, echoing in perfect rhythm with my own heartbeat. I felt compelled to help her. My conscience demanded it, my oath as a doctor screamed at me to save lives. Yet I also knew my patient was waiting, their life hanging in the balance. Desperation clawed at me. I shouted into the fog, I want to help you, I can. But I cannot if you won't let me go. The fog rippled, almost like a sigh, and then she appeared even closer, impossibly close, standing in front of the SUV as if the road had compressed around her. Her eyes glowed faintly in the mist, and she whispered, you must help me, before it is too late. I felt my hands tremble, the wheel slick with sweat. I realized that she was testing me, measuring my resolve, my willingness to act. I knew I couldn't stay, I had to reach my patient. I slammed the SUV into drive, praying the vehicle would respond. The tires fought for traction on the muddy path. For a terrifying moment, it felt like the SUV was suspended, hovering above the ground, refusing to move. Then, as if obeying some unseen force, it lurched forward, dragging me along the narrow road. I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was still there, walking, gliding behind the SUV, effortlessly keeping pace, her gaze locked on mine. Then she started running, but it wasn't like running I had ever seen. Her feet barely touched the ground, yet she kept pace with my vehicle. Panic surged, and I realized there was no escape from this loop. I was caught between my duty to my patient and the inexplicable pull of the ghostly bride. The trees closed in even further, their branches clawing at the SUV, the fog wrapping tighter, like it wanted to squeeze me out of existence. My radio crackled, faint, almost drowned by the supernatural ambience, with the voice of a nurse from the hospital. Dr. Mercer? Where are you? Are you okay? I tried to respond, but my words faltered, my throat dry. The bride's whispering rose above the static, her voice urgent, pleading, terrifyingly real. Please, take me to him. I forced my SUV into a sharp turn, the tires sliding, mud flying, but the moment I looked up, I was back on the same stretch of road. Blood glistened faintly on the asphalt again. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my mind rational. I realized I had no choice. I had to confront her, somehow, to break the loop. I stopped the SUV, my heart pounding violently. The fog swirled around me, dense, suffocating, alive. She emerged from the mist, closer than ever, her eyes full of pleading sorrow, her hands trembling. The bridal bundle clutched tightly to her chest, wet and heavy. I stepped out, trembling, but determined. "I will help you, if you let me pass, I will help you, I promise," I said, my voice breaking under the weight of fear. The fog rippled again, almost acknowledging my words. Slowly, she stepped aside, her gaze following me. I jumped back into the SUV and floored the accelerator, taking the first turn with precision, praying this would finally lead me toward the main road, toward safety, toward my patient. And for a moment, the fog thinned, the trees retreated, and I dared to breathe. But deep down, I knew the presence lingered, watching, waiting. The warmth of the handkerchief still pulsed, faint, almost like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. Somewhere in the shadows of Mud Island Road, she waited. And I knew this chase was far from over. The road finally began to straighten. The fog thinned slightly, though the air remained damp and heavy, clinging to my skin like a second layer. I could still feel her presence behind me, faint but insistent, in the rhythm of my heartbeat and the warm pulse of the handkerchief tied tightly around my wrist. Every instinct screamed at me to drive faster, to escape, but I knew I had a patient waiting, someone alive, someone who needed me now. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles burned. The SUV tires kicked up mud as I hurtled through the twisting forest road, barely keeping the vehicle on track. And then I saw her again, standing at the side of the road, impossibly still, her bridal gown wet, her face pale and hauntingly beautiful, the anklets jingling softly. She didn't move, didn't call, but her presence was undeniable. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to look away. I had to focus on the road. My mind raced, she was trapped here, caught between some world I couldn't understand, yet she had chosen me to help her. I had to respect her wish, somehow, while fulfilling my own duty. Finally, after what felt like endless minutes that could have been hours, I spotted the faint glow of the patient's house at the end of the road. Relief surged. I pulled into the driveway, heart pounding, sweat dripping down my face. I grabbed my bag, jumped out, and ran to the front door. The patient's family was frantic, their faces etched with fear. I told them to step back as I entered, checked vitals, administered the emergency treatment, injected medicine, stabilized the condition, and reassured them that everything would be okay. My mind, however, kept wandering back to the road, to the fog, to her. I could still feel her eyes on me, watching through the veil of night. As the patient stabilized and the adrenaline began to fade, I knew it was time to return, to face the forest again, to escape the loop, to put this nightmare behind me. I ran back to the SUV, shaking. The engine started, tires spinning on the muddy driveway, and I took a deep breath, preparing for the long drive back through the twisting woods. The moment I hit the forest road, there she was again, standing in the middle of the lane, the bridal bundle held tightly, her gaze fixed on me. My stomach turned. I slowed the vehicle, keeping my distance, and saw something in her hands, a single object from the bundle. It was a small, delicate veil, soaked and shimmering in the faint moonlight. My pulse raced. I understood then. This was her token, her way of saying thank you, her tether to the living world. I reached out instinctively, picking up the veil as I drove slowly past her. Her eyes softened, almost humanly, and for the first time, a faint smile curved her lips. And then, she vanished. Not a step, not a sound, not a trace, just the fog settling back into the trees. I exhaled, a shaky, relieved breath, though deep down I knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The road back felt endless, yet safer now. The handkerchief on my wrist pulsed faintly, a heartbeat that had finally slowed. I kept driving, eventually emerging from the woods onto the main road. The familiar glow of streetlights, the smell of asphalt and pine, everything was normal again. I glanced at the veil in my hand, realizing it was slightly warm, almost alive. My hands shook as I tucked it carefully into my bag. I knew she was gone for now, but the forest, the island, the fog, they would always be there, waiting. Over the following days, I tried to put the encounter behind me. I resumed my regular shifts, tended to my patients, and tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination, a mixture of fatigue, stress, and adrenaline. But then subtle things began to happen. My handkerchief sometimes pulsed faintly without explanation. At night, on the drive to the hospital, I would catch glimpses of white fabric gliding across the edge of the forest, moving with impossible grace. And sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I would see a flicker of pale skin, a face half hidden by a soaked veil, always watching, always waiting. Weeks passed. Life went on, but I could never forget the pleading eyes, the soft jingling of her anklets, the desperate whisper, "Take me to him." I knew that anyone venturing onto Mud Island Road after midnight might encounter her. That the forest was no longer just trees and mud, it was a threshold, a place where the living and the lost collided. I never told anyone the full truth. My colleagues laughed at the idea, chalking it up to fatigue or an overactive imagination. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know that somewhere in the fog and shadows of Mud Island, a bride still waits, clutching her bundle, desperate to reach someone she loved, yet trapped in the endless loop of the woods. I learned a harsh lesson that night: compassion can be dangerous when the supernatural is involved. Helping someone, saving a life, can lead you to crossroads no one should ever reach. And sometimes, even when you survive, you are never truly free. The bride remains. Watching. Waiting. And if you ever find yourself on a deserted rural road, thick fog swallowing the headlights, and hear the faint jingling of anklets, a soft whisper calling your name, do not ignore it. Whether you run or approach, you will never be the same. And as for me, I still carry the veil in my bag. Every night, I feel its faint warmth. A heartbeat that is not mine. A reminder of that night on Mud Island, of the bride who may never find her way, and of the thin line between life, death, and the world in between. And sometimes, when the fog rolls in heavy and thick, I swear I can hear her voice. Whispering my name. Waiting for me. Watching. And I know, no matter where I go, she never truly leaves.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon so that you get notifications on your mobile as soon as our new videos are released. This is my new YouTube channel, and I sincerely hope for your support. I make videos for you, so please let me know in the comments what type of videos you enjoy watching, and I will upload more content related to your preferences. Thank you.